If you come across this land and you don't see Jesus, it was only a tour.
I'm a follower of Jesus, and as a pastor in Brooklyn, New York, I want to see him from a fresh point of view. So I'm embarking on a journey to 6 vastly different countries all around the world.
We're the most extreme nation in the world when it comes to these values.
Every culture I've encountered has revealed something unique about the character of Jesus.
We need to begin to look out for each other.
And shown me the limitations of my own way of seeing things.
It's a loaded question.
I'm ready to discover, to be challenged, all with the hope of knowing Jesus more. I'm Rasool Berry, and I'm in pursuit of Jesus. Singapore. You may have heard a few things about this place. Chewing gum is illegal. They famously cane citizens as punishment for bad behavior. And visitors filling out their customs forms are greeted with the blunt warning, death for drug traffickers. Well, there's a lot more to Singapore than these well-worn caricatures. So for the benefit of my fellow Americans who missed it in school, a little backdrop. Singapore is a city that's also a country. The Republic of Singapore rose from humble beginnings just over 50 years ago. In 1965, this city-state shed its origins as a one-time British colony to become an independent, safe, clean, and global economic powerhouse. Singapore is known as a city in a garden. The lush tropical foliage softens the hard, clean, modern edges of steel and glass. The influence of the West is very clear, yet deep roots of spirituality remain an important part of the culture. If you've watched that movie about insanely wealthy Asian people, you've gotten a glimpse of a glorified version of Singapore. But despite the success, or maybe even because of it, there's a clear longing here.
In the early days, people lived in kampongs or villages. My grandma lived in the middle of the island in a very rudimentary village. There was no running water. And so the government decided to clean up all these villages and resettle them into proper apartments. And then they've converted all this land into, gentrified restaurants and hostels and what have you.
It's so
bars.
crazy. When you're talking about Singapore, there are these moments where it sounds just like New York in different places.
Yeah.
The big harbor,
Yeah.
gentrification, high-rise buildings.
It shifted the community, the mixing. Because in the past, you just hung out, on the streets, with your neighbors, because that was the communal space. But when we went high-rise, the communal space shrunk, and the mixing and the interaction also dropped. So I think over the past 50 years, Singapore as a society has become much more individualistic.
Singaporean by birth, photographer, traveler, and businessman Andrew Chin spent the better part of 10 years living in Central Asia. As a result, he has both an insider's view and an outsider's perspective on Singapore.
Singapore is made up of 3 main ethnic groups. The Chinese are the dominant and the vast majority, about maybe 75%. And then you have about maybe 15% Malay and about maybe 5-6% Indian. And therein lies that Eastness, right? We have a lot of Asians represented. But yet, because of education, because of just society in general, we have become very Western in our thinking and in our values even. Like individualistic, that's typically a very Western value as compared to communal for being a very Asian values. But many Singaporeans can be effectively bilingual. Right. My sister is, and I know of many who are effectively bilingual, and they are able to absorb and handle both personalities. It's not a split personality. Right. They are equally comfortable and confident in English and say in Mandarin. And they understand both cultures. And that's perhaps a unique trait of a Singaporean as compared to, say, maybe a Chinese in America. They are a lot more Western and they are probably not as Asian anymore.
Do you experience Singapore as a very spiritual place?
Everybody agrees there's something out there and they are seeking that spirituality in different forms.
Spirituality mixed with straight consumerism is the striking blend you encounter simply by walking the streets here. If New York is a place where anything you want can be bought, Singapore is a place where any belief can be found, literally on the same streets. Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Taoism, Christianity, all the world's major faith expressions intermingled with the glitz and glamour of the modern-day world religion, consumerism. In New York, I saw that most people had little time for religion, or for that matter, Jesus. Here, you can't go 10 feet without finding some religious symbol or expression. That's why I was interested to talk to Hawaii Z, a pastor of a young church. Like Andrew, he sees the shift in the trajectory of culture in Singapore, but also the enduring impact of its traditional religious values.
Singaporeans predominantly have a worldview that is open to the non-material, the supernatural. And there, in a sense, there's a humility there that, we can't understand everything empirically, And so I think that openness to there's something beyond this, that helps when you start talking about things that are not necessarily, you can't prove it, with a formula. I mean, it really depends on who you talk to. For good or for bad, I think the way that Christianity has adapted to our culture, some aspects of Christianity, you become a Christian and therefore you have a duty to God, a duty to society, a duty to family. I think that appeals to kind of the Confucian ethic. Yeah.
Help break that down for me. What do you mean by Confucian?
Yeah. So, the idea of duty to society, society before self. And together with that comes a lot of what we call filial piety. So respect for parents' wishes, so you would consult your parents on everything, right? Who you marry, what you study, what you work as. So that has been kind of the predominant ethic in Singapore for a long time. Yeah.
How did you come to faith?
How did I come to faith? Well, I was raised in a predominantly kind of Taoist Chinese family. And when I was about 9 years old, my father, who was really not keen on Christianity, had a crisis at work, and he couldn't sleep for 2 weeks. So my mom didn't know what to do, and she turned to a friend, and the friend was a Christian. And the friend said, have you ever thought of going to church? And she said, no, my husband doesn't like Christians. But they were so desperate that they ended up on church that Sunday morning. And according to my dad, it felt like he was home. And he slept for the first time in 2 weeks. And it was a slow journey from there. I mean, they didn't understand anything. They just knew that there was a sense of peace on their hearts. And overnight, we were put into Sunday school. So it's pretty sudden. Yeah.
I gotta say, that is the most different testimony experience. I asked you, how did you come to faith? You gave your father's testimony.
Yeah.
That doesn't tell you the difference between kind of
Eastern and Western, right? Yeah.
Nobody back home ever described their father's conversion story as the basis of their own faith. It's fascinating to see how filial piety, the traditional value of respect for parents, still matters so deeply for people making decisions here. Yet, it's also difficult to shake off the influence of the West.
I'm not quite sure what this is. Seems elaborate.
That's certainly the case as I sit in a place called Common Man Coffee Roasters.
It's sweet, so it'll work.
Simon, a digital strategy expert, went to university in Los Angeles, and the time away has given him a better focus on what makes Singapore distinctly Singapore. This, of course, helps him shatter my illusions that I'm at home.
There's this term that is called kiasuism.
Kiasuism.
That means I'm scared to lose, literally translated. So we are a kiasu society.
Scared to lose.
Yeah, so give you one example. If you see a line, as you go out here and they're queuing up for something that sounds like something good, you just get in line. You don't know what it is, but you know it's probably free and it's good, or you need an edge over the other person. So that sort of like forms a layer of like our psyche, and I think in a very unhealthy way that we begin to think more about yourself, even though we're supposed to be a community-oriented type of culture. Yeah.
Kiasuism.
Kiasuism.
Kiasuism. What do you think is unique that Singapore has to offer to the world?
Well, food is a big thing.
I mean, I can bear witness to the fact that it's really an incredible food culture.
It's huge. Yeah, it's huge because in Asian context, when somebody greets you, they ask you, have you eaten in whatever dialect, right? So that's a uniqueness to begin with. I don't think in America you ask, have you had your dinner?
No.
It's like, that's weird, right?
Yeah, no, we don't ask that.
So that already tells you that food is a huge part of community building and friendships. So I think that is a key reason why Singaporeans love their food. Yeah.
Sharing a meal seems to be the social recipe for finding a place of meaning among the skyscrapers and gardens of Singapore. And I decided to test that greeting, "Have you eaten?" for myself. So while the crew was busy taking care of whatever it is they take care of between scenes, I wandered out on the spotless Singaporean streets and started talking to strangers. That eventually led to an invitation to the north side of Singapore, where I was promised a view and lunch.
You're a cool dude. I don't overthink things.
You have swag.
That is what you guys used it.
Yeah, you
We don't use that here.
All right, but I'm just saying, you got it. I'm giving you a compliment.
Yeah. We got the swag. the funk. We used to call it the funk.
This is my new friend Hardy. Hardy's a lighting director for theater companies in Singapore. He's Malay and one of the most welcoming and friendly people I've met.
So I come up on the street. I just randomly approach you.
That's what happened.
And you just are like, hey, I'm gonna go get something to eat. Come and hang out with us. You didn't even hesitate. Why was that so comfortable for you to just embrace a stranger like that?
Because I was hungry, I wasn't thinking.
Tell me a little bit more about Malay culture.
The Malay culture is a close community. We used to greet each other a long time ago. Everywhere we go, we used to greet each other like Assalamualaikum.
Yep.
And we shake hands. But
not so
not
much.
anymore. We don't even smile at each other. We just, when you walk past by, and then they'll be like, "Why?"
Why do you think that it's like that now? What do you think changed?
The focus is mainly on trying to improve oneself by earning, and the amount of time we spend at work. It's basically the life that we have. You're always checking in the clock for work. And when you go back, you just don't have time to check in yourself, to really be at ease, because by the time you be too tired, you be just, I'm gonna have a drink, I'm gonna shower, I'm gonna sleep.
Yeah.
And the next day is just the same day as before.
Yeah.
That is why I think we just couldn't embrace the culture we had a long time ago.
I didn't expect to hear this nostalgia from Hardy. It seems like everyone I've talked to has benefited from Singapore's boom. But then, no matter their background, they all realize that there's a kind of emptiness to it as well. Maybe it's the deep spirituality that surrounds this culture. Devout, religious practice of every stripe just steps away from the temples of wealth and success.
We don't really want to talk about religion when we are doing something sinful, We try to leave it out.
Yeah, that can be a little conflicting. I can see that.
And then we would just stop the subject and say, why are you even talking about religion when we are having a beer now?
Right. Right. So tell me about what your perspective is on who Jesus is.
I'm not a typical mind like me. I'm not really into the religious side. So for me, I don't mean to be like religiously conflicting, but when they say Jesus is the Son of God,
right?
Okay, Jesus is the Son of God. So who is God? Since Jesus is the Son, so
so that's a confusing part. But based on what you do believe about who Jesus is, who is he? Right?
He's the Messiah. He's like the same as our prophet.
Okay.
He spread the word.
For someone who said he prefers to avoid religious conversations, Hardy certainly didn't have any trouble, even with someone like me who sees Jesus as more than just another prophet. And now, without missing a beat, my new friend whisks us off to the promised lunch.
The most important thing
Yes.
in your bucket list for Singapore before you leave, you have to try durians.
Oh, I already know. We've already, that's there. I saw a sign on the hotel that said, no smoking allowed and no durians allowed on the hotel. Why would a hotel ban a fruit called durian?
When you are close to it, it's an unmistakable odor.
Yes.
That
Does it taste better than it smells?
yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
it does. Okay.
Yes. But don't kiss anyone after you ate a durian.
So you didn't tell me now, I won't be able to kiss anybody. It has an odor, right?
Yeah. Don't burp.
Don't.
That gas is like methane in your stomach. Once it explodes, it's like poisonous cloud.
So why do people eat this?
It's nice.
Okay.
It's a delicacy, you know?
Yeah. Would it surprise you if a foreigner comes to Singapore, opens up a durian and go, and then starts to eat it and enjoy it? Would that surprise you?
I mean, if you have a level of different grade of humans, that will be epic one. Those humans are epic humans, you know?
Oh man, I think you setting me up, Hardy. But I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna let you know how it goes.
That smell is going to stick into your pores for...
Hardy has, at the expense of his own plans for the day, showed me love, gave me laughter, and a deeper connection with this place. He didn't have to take this time for me, but he chose to anyway. Of course, he also gave me the challenge to be epic. Back in the middle of the city, I find myself about to eat even more at the Maxwell Hawker Center. Hawker centers are the best sort of food court you can imagine. Rows of small food vendors selling almost any kind of cuisine you could desire. The competition is fierce, and the mediocre are quickly pushed out by the law of supply and demand. The plate of food you get here is on par with the finest restaurants at a fraction of the cost. This place is distinctly Singaporean. Yes, I realize this episode will now feature food scenes back to back to back. But I'm in Singapore, and I'm down with this local greeting. Have you eaten? Meaning hello.
Can you explain to me what we have in front of us?
This diabolical looking thing is
Yes.
what we call century egg.
Oh,
It actually featured in Fear Factor.
okay.
It was one of the things they had to eat. It's actually quite edible. Oh, wow.
Okay.
You need the ginger.
A bit of ginger.
You're a brave man.
I like it.
Tan Su In and Bernice Lee run a publishing company called Graceworks. Their sole focus is on amplifying Jesus' message of grace or unmerited favor. Their efforts are to humbly and effectively shape the conversation in Singapore on just what kind of leader Jesus is and why he matters.
In a city like this one, where everyone's so busy looking out for number one, we need to begin to look out for each other. I think there is a greater awareness of the need for transcendence, for something bigger than yourself. A lot of the younger people are seeking, which for us is really, really exciting because it means that there is a future for this country, because the younger people are beginning to think beyond just issues of wealth.
For them, for example, even when we share the gospel means you go to heaven when you die one day. This doesn't cut it. They want to see how are you meeting human need today. And some of them are actually doing it. We are very impressed. They're not waiting for us, man. I mean, there are groups out there feeding the homeless, helping the poor. And so the church must get their act together, otherwise we're going to lose these folks because they have a much more holistic and, in my mind, a more biblical view of the gospel.
So how do we engage with people like that? How do we tell them that there really is something better? You need to befriend them. You can't just be a commando and just charge in and make them believe. You can't. You have to be friends with them. And it's in sharing lives, sharing meals, that we've seen lives change.
Well, we feel that this is not just a Christian thing, this is a human thing. Everybody needs to be connected, man. And we think that friendship is the most universal connection. And it's what Jesus said, I call you friends, and he expects us to be friends with each other. And often I think the world will be saved by this simple acts of friendship of people who love each other. Not some big grandiose event out there. Just friends, man, who will die for each other. I think the world will be saved. And that's how Christ came. He came to die for us.
What do you think is so distinct and valuable that makes it like, I need to not only cling to him, but also help other people cling to him too? What is it about Jesus that prompts you to be that guy?
Well, at the macro level, I think Christianity meets the deepest needs of humankind. We're all crying out for humanity, for some kind of community that we can connect with. We are crying out for meaning in life, for purpose, for redemption, because all of us blow it. We are crying out for connection with transcendence. And Christianity at its best gives all this. An inclusive community. Whether you're rich or poor, whatever race you are, you're equally loved. So Christianity at its best.
Yeah.
Loving people in the name of Jesus. Meeting the deepest needs of humanity. That is Christianity at its best. It's how followers of Jesus are supposed to follow Jesus. And that kind of love resonates here in Singapore. I've seen in this far eastern island an ancient insight about the significance of community. It's a value that has deepened my understanding of the teaching of Jesus that we should look to serve rather than be served. And yet Singaporeans, in a culture in flux between East and West, still hunger and thirst for meaning beyond money and a purpose beyond profit. They are crying out for connection, acceptance, and grace. To their longing, Jesus and his followers here say, "Come, have you eaten?" It's beautiful.
I was told by a man named Hardy in Singapore that there are levels to this, and at the very top of the level, there are epic people who could eat a whole piece of durian in one shot. I'm gonna strive to epic level right now.
There it is.
Boom. One shot. Epic. I am epic now.